My boss is terrible, period, I gotta punctuate it. I said I loved your shirt, but behind your back I said I hate it. The lightning strike me down, if I lied, me no one be around when my tongue's untied. Everybody says it's okay, all the little things I say with my big fat mouth. La 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 la. My big fat mouth.
My big fat mouth gets me in trouble.
So I guess I'll say it again because it's kind of my thing around here, but good morning, everybody. So I know I said there's not any announcements, so there is a little bit of housekeeping that I would like to do, if that's okay. You guys can entertain me for a second, please. So we just got out of the Give Hope series where we talk about generosity and giving, and I just want to let everybody know, as the executive pastor, I don't necessarily like talking about money. However, I have to do it every now and again. But what I would like to say is I don't mind talking about this generosity or this money because you give it through Tribe and it goes to help hungry kids in the community, right? And I've always been very passionate. If you ever heard me talk, I'm very passionate about the hungry kids in our community, right? So I haven't made contact with Give Kindness, so there's still time to give. But I also want to say, and you can give online through the app, the giving station or whatever, right? But I want to say thank you to everybody because generosity comes in many different forms. And I know there's a lot of people who volunteer and sacrifice a lot of time around here. And I just want to give everybody, my gratitude, but I also want to say thanks, and we can give hand clap of praise to everybody that sacrifices their time around here because we can't do it without that. I can't do it by myself. Pastor Jason, Pastor Matt, Carey, they can't do it. We can't even do it, the four of us. We need everybody, right? So I just want to say, in Fonda, I can't forget about Fonda. So that's my housekeeping. But I want to say, with the sacrifice and time, I want to welcome everybody to October at Tribe Church. Yes. That's my dad. And I know Pastor Matt and Pastor Carey, they talked about it, but I pray they're on their sabbatical, their time off, and I hope that they are enjoying their time and finding that much-deserved rest. But I want to say that, and I know October in this area is vacation season, but I just want to say that, for me, I am glad that October is here. I'm happy that October is here for several reasons. Obviously my baseball team is in the playoffs. But my girls, I see you over there. I can't see much, but I can see that over here, right? But also my girls are getting back into basketball, so we're pretty busy in our house. But I'm happy. October for me is very life-giving. I know it can be stressful for some, but it's very life-giving for me. So I just, again, thank you for spending October with us. But it's pretty fitting that I'm called. Pastor Jason, I think, did this on purpose, but I'm called to open up the series that's titled My Big Fat Mouth. Because if you've spent any kind of time with me, you know, and maybe you've even seen, my mouth often gets me in trouble. Daily. And and I've talked about it in depth. Some people say it's just maybe my lack of fear that fuels my mouth. Maybe it's my life experiences that I've often talked about. Or maybe it's just my overall willingness for life. But often what happens, my mouth will, it's the old saying, my mouth will write checks, and it's often withdrawing or depositing with insufficient funds. A lot. But it's so true. It is so true, something this powerful. Not just for me, but for all of us. Something this powerful. We have a powerful tool at our disposal. Our mouths have the ability to build up, and they have the ability to tear down. Our mouths have the ability to speak love and hate. Our mouths have the ability to kiss It's great. Yeah, I know. It's awful. But it also has the ability to betray. Our mouths can make people feel like Jesus does exist and is inside of all of us, but our mouths can also make people that believe that this Jesus stuff is just rubbish. And maybe, especially with what's going on in the world today, maybe it's time we talk about how powerful those words are, or how powerful those words can be. Words are powerful, and sometimes I think we forget that. I think we forget that because, society or just because we're often silenced. We're silenced for our opinions, we're silenced for our viewpoints, and we're silenced simply because the power of those words can help create life, and unfortunately, can unjustly take life. Or unfortunately, our words and our mouths have the power of death. And I'm going to promise to everybody in here and everybody in my life, I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue to keep talking. I'm going to continue to keep talking and talking and talking. I'm not going to hide my faith for anyone. I'm not going to hide my beliefs for anyone. I know the world would rather me shut up and stop talking, but I'm not going to. And I know you may look at this and say, okay, is this sermon series about everybody just accepting Jeff's big fat mouth? Or is it controlling our big fat mouth? Maybe over the next 4 weeks, maybe over the next month, we'll figure that out together. But during this series, we're going to discuss 4 areas where our mouth will get us in trouble: complaining, lying, criticizing, gossiping. And if we think about it, those 4 areas that we will be discussing rarely have the ability to be life-giving, and often remove the idea that Jesus' followers have that healthy heart, right? Often we talk about Jesus comes into your life and you have that healthy heart, but sometimes our words don't match that. Many people would say once you believe and you proclaim your faith, Jesus is now in your heart, right? What's the next step? So I have to say, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, in the 1900s for some of you kids out there. And to quote a man full of wisdom, Nate Bargatze, I grew up in a Christian culture in the 80s and 90s, and that's when people were the most Christian ever. And I know, yeah, if you grew up, it was the most Christian ever. But I remember thinking, and I remember struggling with this idea that God wants to be in my heart. And I both looked at it from a literal sense, and I struggled with, how can a man fit into my heart? And I also remember thinking, my heart's pretty critical, right? They talk about health, and that guy's going to be in there, and he's going to be blocking things, and how am I going to get blood? And it didn't make sense to me. How does all that work, right? But the 80s and 90s, they were a crazy time, though. They explained things in crazy different ways. And I remember watching this video. I believe it was in youth, and I remember watching a video, and it talked about that the Beastie Boys were demonic. And if you listened to just one song, you were doomed. So if you spent the last couple months here with us, and thanks to the 5 for 5, we're all doomed. We heard a little bit of Beastie Boys at church, and we're all doomed. So thank you for that. Sometimes we give you Jesus, sometimes we give you doom. But obviously on this side of things, I can look at it, and that the video was just trying to change our mindsets, to understand that what comes in often comes out. Out of the overflow of our heart, the mouth speaks. So is it pleasing or glorifying to God? And if we're not necessarily positive. Does that mean our hearts are in turmoil or our hearts are struggling with many things? Maybe. And I know I've discussed this in depth before, and many of you will find this hard to believe. I often see and view things differently. I know it's hard to believe. But, and I talked about this at a different sermon, but I can look at a family picture or even just a picture of Kelly and I can tell you the conversation we were having right before that picture was taken. And, and I don't understand why my brain thinks like that. But sometimes that conversation isn't necessarily, let's just say, life-giving. And I know some of you can relate. But it's funny, I got to thinking about this when I was preparing this message. But as we get older, we can hide our faces, some of us. We can hide our faces. And we can hide our faces pretty good. So you're arguing with whomever, you're passionately discussing something, and someone points a camera at you and says, smile, or cheese. And some of us can fake that smile pretty well. Like we should be in Hollywood, like, we're an actor, right? But kids can't do that. You can look at a picture and exactly tell what was on the mind of the kid, right? And, some of my favorite are the Santa Claus pictures, where you can tell. It is painfully obvious you can tell. It was not the kid's idea to sit on that dude's knee. Not at all. It was for the parents, right? I mean, the kids love Santa. Don't get me wrong. They love Santa. And he's going to bring me the gifts. He's going to bring us the gifts. But sit on that dude's knee? Nah, that's a no for me, dog. But they're complaining, right? They want him to bring something, but they're complaining. And if you think about that, how often are we like that? We're crying. We're complaining. And if this dude in this beard doesn't bring me the one and only 24 karat gold, La-boo-boo, he's dead to me. I got to admit, I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. But, yes. I'm not that old. So if you haven't already figured it out, week 1 in this series, we're discussing complaining. But we complain, right? I mean, we can all admit, we can all be honest in church, we all complain. Humans complain, and if you say you don't, then I will continue to pray for you, and when Pastor Jason preaches about lying, I want you to listen to every word he says, right? But it's one of my it's not really a non-negotiable or an unbreakable guideline at work. But for my team, this is what I often talk about, is if you come into my office and if you're coming to my office just to simply complain, I'm going to be honest with you, I may or may not listen to you. And you may get a portion of me, you may not. It just really depends on what I got going on. But if you come complaining with ideas or some kind of methods to make it better, I will stop what I'm doing. I'm all ears. I'm listening. Let's figure it out together, right? And I know that may sound a little harsh, like I'm not interested in what they're saying, but sometimes our lives, and especially our work schedules, they can be overwhelmed with positive and negative things, and sometimes that complaining, it just makes it worse, and it's just toxic, and it's just gas. It doesn't make anything better. But often another very important tool we have at our disposal is the Bible. And the Bible has those steps to make things better when you actually pay attention to it. And we can easily refer to it for everything that builds us up or tears us down. James, the brother of Jesus, who struggled with belief until the resurrection, he discusses what impact the tongue or the mouth can have when we are not using the tool effectively. And here's what he says. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because when you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the animal. Or take the ships, for example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a small rudder wherever the pilot wants it to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boats. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself one fire by hell. So, if you're like me, and when I was reading this verse and kind of studying the words a little bit, I got a little confused, I'll be honest. And so, but recap that, it says, anyone who is never faulty with their mouth can keep their whole body in check. None of us. Our tongue, our words have the ability to cause serious destruction like a forest fire. But something as small as a rudder can change the ship. So your mouth has the ability to change the direction of a ship or a church or a life. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. But no human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With the tongue. And this part right here, I wish so many pastors, preachers, Christian leaders, spiritual leaders, whomever, I wish they would pay attention and pay attention with their tongue. We praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings. We have been made, and who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. It's a powerful tool. But see, James, he's in Jerusalem, and he's on this side of the resurrection. And on that side of the resurrection, the Christians are facing persecution, all sorts of violence, just nasty stuff. And he's writing to his readers. He's writing to his brothers and sisters, hoping to encourage them to be consistent in their Christian lives. Even in the midst of persecution, even in the midst of all kinds of nasty stuff, because he wanted everybody to be strengthened. And he wanted to strengthen us to be glorifying to God. So let's rewind a little bit, like it was in the 90s, Be Kind, Rewind. I wanted to get a t-shirt. I tried to get a t-shirt on that. It didn't work out very well. But maybe there's a sticker out there or something. But we know in the Bible that even God grew frustrated. He grew frustrated with his kids, often like we do. If you're a parent, if you're a leader, you know. But he grew frustrated with his kids complaining a lot. The Israelites, they hold, and back then they held multiple gold medals in the Olympic sport of complaining. They spent years and years and years in bondage, slavery, praying for a Savior, praying for relief. And so before God grew frustrated, he knew, he was like, well, I'm going to help. I'm going to go down there, I'm going to get down there and help them. And, so he developed in miraculous plagues. In his effort, he's desperately trying to change the heart and the mind of Pharaoh. He parts the Red Sea, drowns the pursuing army, fed them manna from heaven, water from a rock, and all the while they're complaining, right? He gave them clothes that never wore out. And I look at that as, he's doing all these things, he's saving them, he's doing all these miraculous things, and they're still complaining. And I look at it as a father, he's going way above than I would have, right? So I'm looking at it as, if you guys don't stop complaining, you guys don't stop arguing, I'm going to turn this car around. I'm going to turn the ship around, right? Your mouth is changing the direction. I mean, they look at it and they say, I still don't have that one and only 24 karat gold Labubu. So God, you're dead to me. I'm turning this thing around myself. I don't want to follow you anymore. I'm going to go move back, and I'm going to move back to my idols. And like I mentioned, if you're a parent, if you're a leader, in any capacity, you can relate to the story, because when you think about it, when the people are under our leadership, or the people who ask you to lead the way, and you give them everything they ask for, everything they ask for, they still complain no matter what. So you can understand. So this is what they said right here. This is what they said to Moses. Was it because there was no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So I'm thinking about this, and I know how the story ends. But they were praying for a Savior. They're praying for a relief. This guy comes to give them something, and they're like, nope, you know what? I want to go back. I want to go back to the bondage. I want to go back to all that turmoil, and I would just prefer to die serving the Egyptians. I mean, it's clear, right? It's clear that they loved bondage, slavery. So Moses responds, and it's clear that he's responding on behalf of the Lord. This is what Moses says. You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening, all of the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling. He has heard your complaining against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling, complaining against us, against me, but against the Lord. Are you really complaining about this? Are you really complaining about that? Are you really focused on the negative? Are you really looking at that picture, the picture with all these blessings, all this good stuff going on, and you're focused on the negative? Is all you can see in the picture is desert? Have you ever wondered what the top complaints are? Like just, top 10, top whatever complaints that people give, humans give on a general day-to-day basis? I'm glad you asked. I have it. Number 1, technology problems. Wi-Fi, forgotten password. Oh, forgotten password's the worst. No signal, device problems. Poor customer service. Put on hold too long. I love that music. Oh man, that's my favorite. Having to repeat information to different people. I like to tell people, I like to ask for the supervisor first, because I'm going to tell them I'm not going to repeat myself several times, and I'm not going to do it in a very nice way. I know I'm complaining right there, see? Dealing with an unhelpful staff, traffic or transportation. I could write a book on this. And full transparency with my church family here, this is when they really tested Jesus in me. Everyday tasks like waiting in long lines, delivery delays, finding items out of stock, managing endless emails, social media functions. Or maybe it's your spouse. Maybe your spouse tells you eat too loud. Maybe you have to eat in the garage. Or I promise you, if you chew your gum any louder, your teeth are going to be gone. Or the weather and environment. I can see this. At first I was kind of struggling with this a little bit, but I got to be honest, I am tired of taking a shower and then immediately sweating. I'm tired of it. I'm ready for some chill weather. Chill weather, right? And obviously, when I looked it up, there's many different complaints. There's many different things out there, struggles, depending on what your everyday life is. But I just wanted it, basic day to day. But you know who had every right to complain about his circumstances, about his everyday life? Jesus. But Paul. Paul had a lot to complain about. Shipwrecked, prison, all kinds of different things. But before we look at Paul, have you ever thought about what you complain about the most? Just in your mind, what do you complain about the most? Just day-to-day life. Obviously, playing the comparison game is a horrible idea. I rarely recommend it. But in this particular instance, we're going to compare a little bit. And it's not necessarily to be the thief of joy, but it's to bring a little bit of perspective on our opportunities to complain versus others. And for example, people saying there's nothing to watch on this streaming platform that has thousands and thousands and thousands of movies and TV. I am one of those people that say there's nothing on. There's just nothing on. But kids, before there were thousands and thousands and thousands of TV shows and thousands of movies and streaming opportunities, we had 8 clear channels. Now wait a second. Now, I know there's some people that say, well, I only had 1 or 2 channels. Okay, I'm talking about me in this particular instance, right? Had 8 clear channels, one of the wooden box TVs, right? And I was the remote. So we had a little turn thing, and I was the remote. See, I wasn't very good at it, though. I got fired real fast. Real fast. But we had 8 clear channels, and then we had 4 snowy or fuzzy channels. Okay? Now, kids, back in the day, there was fuzz, it was snow. Yes. Thank you. Snow and fuzz, okay? But I remember this one particular instance that I watched an entire fuzzy show, okay? Entire fuzzy show. And I was completely convinced from the horn, from the voices, from the characters, I was completely convinced that it was the Dukes of Hazzard. It was Sesame Street. That's perspective. Perspective, right? So why do we complain, though? Why do humans complain? Those evil ideas, they're driven by Satan and are completely focused on taking the joy out of everything. Focused on taking the joy out of everything and removing your ability to see the joy in anything. Evil can and does literally take the joy out of things we love the most in life. And then we complain about the things that we love most in life because we cannot see the good in it anymore. Think about this for a second. Maybe you missed the good in just simply coming to church this morning. Maybe you had someone beside you talking about you take too long to get ready, or you always take the wrong routes, or you got me the wrong coffee. But let me ask you this for a second, and let's get real. How many people in this world would love the opportunity to get the wrong coffee? Or how many people in this world would love the opportunity to take the wrong route to church? Or how about they would love the opportunity to spend too much time getting ready to go to church? See, there's a freedom. There's a freedom that we have in our ability to practice all of those characteristics of life. It's perspective. And please see my heart. My focus is not to guilt anyone into becoming frustrated with yourself or complaining or get frustrated because you complain. Or sometimes your brain removes the ability to see the joy in anything. It's okay. We're human. God did not make one mistake in making every single part of you. There's no mistake. And I need everyone to remember that. The last thing I want anyone to do is feel guilty about coming to church this morning, or feeling guilty about having certain ideas on how you want your life to go. My hope in this morning is I just want to provide you with the encouragement to see the blessings and the grace of everything you have in your life, whether it be good or bad. Because I understand it is nearly impossible for anyone to stop complaining. I promise you right now, I will leave here, I will get in my car, and I will complain about something. And what I love the most is when I preach to myself later in the day. I quote the sermon back to myself. It's great. It is a battle that I struggle almost every sermon because I'm human. Now, the Apostle Paul, also human, who we talked about. And we talk about the Apostle Paul often around here for many different reasons, many different instances, but this particular focus, it's around complaining. And Paul has some pretty clear wisdom on, his opportunity to complain, but also his perspective and his life and his environment that he was going through. And like I said, if anybody had a reason to complain, it was him. See, Paul always wanted to go to Rome. He talked about it in many different letters to different churches. He always wanted to go to Rome. And he talked about it to his church, like I mentioned it. But Paul didn't want to go to Rome for vacation. I would love to go to Rome for vacation. If anybody's thinking about presents in the future, I'll take Rome vacation. But I would also love to go to, if I'm ever given the opportunity, likely not going to happen, to go and preach the gospel in Rome. I mean, how great would that be, right? But that's what Paul wanted to do. Paul wanted to go and spread his ministry. He wanted to go and spread the gospel because he knew Rome was the ticket. Back then, first century, Rome was the ticket. Rome was this melting pot of people and demographics, and he knew that if he could go there and he could reach those people, then those people would reach their people, and their people would reach their people. He knew exactly what was going to happen. Paul always wanted to go to Rome as a pastor or preacher or whatever title you prefer, and he wanted to go as that spiritual leader, but unfortunately he got arrested, and he ended up going to Rome. He made it. He made it to Rome, but he made it to Rome as a prisoner. So there he is. Let's picture this, right? In the imagery, let's picture, Paul, he's in handcuffs, and back then in the first century, what they did for, depending on the prisoner, they would cuff him to a Roman guard. So now he's cuffed to a Roman guard. I'm sure there's some smells going on in that Roman prison. I'm sure the Roman guard probably had some smells going on. Now, you guys can fact check me on this. Pretty sure. I did look a little bit. But in the Bible, it doesn't really talk about it. But I bet, I'm almost certain, that Paul was praying for, I don't know, what do people use nowadays? Irish Spring or Lifebuoy, maybe some Dial soap, Axe body spray, right? Something. I'm sure he's praying for that, right? Because I'm sure that smell. But as he sits there, he's got this rough existence, and he decides to write a letter. And that's what I love about Paul. He had all these, nasty things going on. He's like, you know what? I'm going to write a letter to my church. So he writes a letter to the church in Philippi, and this is some of what he says. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm already out. I often grumble and argue, unfortunately. Do everything without grumbling or arguing, so that you may become blameless and pure, children of God without fault in a warped and crooked generation. Think about that for just a second. The Bible was, composed long ago, still talks about a warped and crooked generation. It seems like we could apply that to now. Then you will shine among them like stars in the sky. Paul wrote this letter. He wrote this letter to encourage, joy, and to unify. He wrote this letter to encourage joy and to unify, not to guilt anyone into being happy. He could see and was fearing division amongst his church. He was fearing division and a lack of unity in his church. He knew his people needed encouragement. He knew his people needed inspiration. He knew his people needed Jesus. You can take Paul's word for it that he's written in his letters while he was in prison and house arrest, cuffed to a stinky Roman guard. Or you can just look at the spiritual and even practical reasons for us to avoid complaining. So there's many different studies. I mean, there's all kinds of different things out there, but there's many different studies on eating badly and what our body goes through when we eat bad stuff. You know, one particular instance, you know, when you eat sugar, your body craves more sugar, more and more and more sugar, more, you know, and so on. And again, if you spend any kind of time with me, you know I love sugar. I do not discriminate really against sugar, but I know the repercussions of sugar. And there are just as many, if not more, studies about mental health and the factors that are associated with mental health and negative mindsets. And studies continue to prove that when we complain, we are rewiring our brain to want more and more complaining. We are wiring our brain to just keep complaining and complaining and complaining. And what happens is you keep wiring your brain to complain and complain and complain, and then instead of complaining being a negative, the complaining becomes a positive. Right? So if you look at it, if you're adding complaining and you just keep adding negatives and negatives and negatives, you're going to get more negatives, right? But when you multiply negatives together, you eventually get a positive, right? So now you're rewiring your brain to see negative stuff as a positive. When all we do is complain and all you have is negative thoughts, you're going to get exactly what you want. You're going to get exactly what you're expecting. And maybe you experienced that coming to church this morning. Or maybe you experienced that when the first time you went to church. You know, picture this. You started off, you know, you're going to work. You already got a negative mindset about organized religion. You already got a negative mindset about church. You got somebody beside you that's complaining about how you're driving or the coffee or whatever the case may be, right? And then you get here, and you got this dude up here preaching. Seems a little suspicious to me. His hat's always sideways. He always preaches way too long. So then you get here, and what miraculously happens? Oh, you love it here, and you can't wait to come back next week. Right? Right? But if you go through everything in life with negativity, the chances of something positive, you know, actually being positive is often slim. And I know, this was me. There are guys that are shifting in their seats, uncomfortable in their seats, right? Sitting there like this, all across North America, all across the world. Because of negative mindsets. And please, if you, I want everybody to understand, and I know I've said a few different things. I want everybody to hear this. There is already enough negativity in this world. And there are already enough people who are going to give you negativity. People are going to give you more negativity than you'll ever need or want. So I'm begging you to be positive. Be the one person you have in your life that's positive. You are a child of God, and you are made in His likeness just like everybody else. But if everybody else is bringing negative, Just be positive to yourself. There is so much beauty in every part of you. There's so much goodness. There's so much grace. And just your existence. And if you're constantly just negative, not even necessarily negative about yourself, but just negative in general, you're not honoring God. So give yourself permission to see something beautiful. In fact, go out this week, and find beauty in something that you normally would not find beauty in. Find beauty in something that you normally would complain about. Just see what happens. Just focus on a little bit of beauty and just see what happens. And if you're naturally negative around the people, if you're naturally complaining, you're the person that complains, you're the negative person, and you rarely have anything to positive when you get around your people, change that. Just even briefly. Just an hour. And eventually changing your perspective will lead you to see less and less negative and more positive. More grace. More worship in God's grace. Worship in God's intelligence. Because I know right now we can't change everything in life. But you can change your perspective. I mean, understand, if you can change your circumstances, please do. Change it. Leave it. Drop it. Trash it. Whatever helps. And Paul tells us in many different letters, but he tells us this, because he couldn't get out of prison. He knew he couldn't get out of prison, but he changed his perspective. This is what he says. But even if I am being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service coming from faith, I am glad and I rejoice with all of you. So you too should be glad and rejoice with me. And I know, maybe you're sitting there thinking, man, that sounds kind of weird. I don't know about it. So in the first century, and even before that, when they were doing an animal sacrifice or they were sacrificing something to God, they would often take the most expensive drink that they had, pour it on the animal sacrifice, and then this steam would come up, and that was also their offering or their sacrifice to God. If you think about it in today's perspective, pouring out a little for his homies, right? So that's what Paul was doing, right? That's what he was talking about. We have fun, right? We have fun. But Paul is saying, even if my life is being poured out onto a sacrifice, that he will be rejoiced. But not only will he be rejoiced, he will rejoice with them. He will rejoice with us. And he also told his church to offer themselves as a living sacrifice. Please understand, living sacrifice. We need to worship God with our whole self. Because there's so many people out there that are like, yep, you know what? I'm going to offer my whole self to God when I die. It's pretty easy to say, God, when I'm dead, you got me. Every bit of me. But while I'm alive, I don't know, but you may get 50%. It's not balancing. That math isn't mathing in my mind. And if we are complaining and all we do is complain, are we offering our whole self to God? No. Were the Israelites offering their whole self to God? I know that many of us can see the beauty and the positivity in a lot of aspects of life, but when we complain, we are removing the ability to be glorifying to God, and we're reducing everything down to rubbish. Just like our words have the ability to build up or tear down, our words have the ability to either glorify or mortify. And when we reduce that stuff down to rubbish, we are changing the main character of the story. We think about that for a second. When we worship and when we glorify God, God is the main character. God should be the main character in our story. But when we complain and we reduce down, we are changing the main character. Because when I say that I am a Jesus follower or Christ is in me, Jesus is the center of our existence, the center of my existence. We have made the decision to sacrifice our whole self for Him. There are no takebacks. Our story should be about God, and we should rejoice in Him no matter the circumstances. We all know the saying. When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. That saying's not new. People have been saying that for a long time. And I know Paul doesn't actually say lemons or lemonade. But this can be applied to it. And this is what he says. Now I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that what has happened to me has actually served to advance the gospel. Perspective. In turmoil and in hardships, it's almost impossible for us to think that what I'm going through right now is actually going to advance the gospel. As a result, it has become clear throughout the whole palace guard and to everyone else that I am in chains for Christ. He changed it from unrighteous to righteous. And I could stop right there. I mean, it's real easy. And I know some of you are like, yep, stop, let's go. I'm ready to go. Football's coming on in a little bit. But it's easy to see the direction here. We take our complaints, right? We take our complaints, we crumble them up, and we use it to advance the gospel. Paul is telling you, and he's telling you that you think that he's the prisoner in this story, or that you're the prisoner in the story. The unbeliever will forever be the prisoner in every story. So what are you chained to? Think about that today. What are you chained to? And if you could change your face when someone points that camera at you, or you are so passionate about wanting that picture to be beautiful, and you want to be able to see the happiness in that picture, then be passionate about seeing the happiness you have in your life. Be passionate about changing the happiness in your life. And if you're sitting here today and you're thinking, man, I got something good working in my life, I just don't know what it is yet. I'm encouraging you today. I'm giving you permission, okay? And I know that I'm just up here, I'm the pastor today. I'm giving you permission to ignore all those negative voices, all those people saying all those negative things, ignoring all that, and seeing the beauty that you have in your life. Because I want so badly for you to see what I see in you. And I want even more. Oh my goodness, I want even more. For you guys to see what God sees in you. Don't miss next week. Next week will be a very impactful Sunday. I will miss everybody, but please do not miss. I encourage you to be here. I'm going to pray and I'm going to wrap this up. Heavenly Father, I thank you for everyone in here, Lord. I thank you for the good and the bad in our lives, Lord, and I pray not only for myself to just take a second and to see all that beauty, Lord. I pray for everyone else in here to take that same opportunity and just to ignore everything that would bring them down and just focus on you. Because if we focus on you, we can change. We can change the trajectory of the ship, of the path, whatever we're driving, Lord, the path of our lives. We can change the direction when we focus on you. And Lord, I thank you for October. I thank you for just the opportunity to show everyone your love and your grace and your goodness, Lord. And I pray that we continue just to smile and be happy with each other and just love each other, because we know through you